Thank you so much for having me. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Genevieve Leveille, and I am the CEO of Agriledger. And I'm going to take you through a little journey with me on how we're using blockchain to revolutionize the food and really the agricultural supply chain. And I'd like to say thank you for the team in Kerala to have me. It's actually been, I think I was thinking about it today. It was about 18 years ago that I visited Kerala the first time and spent time on the backwaters of Kerala and had such lovely food. I still remember the bananas and everything else. And so I know you guys also come from a food culture like I do, and I will take you through my journey. So I don't know if many of you know about Haiti. And Haiti is basically where Christopher Columbus landed in 1492 on his way to India. I guess he must have forgotten to go right versus left, but anyway, he ended up in this beautiful land. And Haiti was the first island in the Caribbean to be uncovered. And it actually, for many years after that, so that's why you have West Indies and East India and the East Indies. The climate is very much like that of India, and very lush lands and very fruitful. So, history of Haiti, beside the 1492 little wrong turn by Mr. Columbus, has also been very interesting, to say the least. So it was, so those of you who may not be aware, it was the first Black nation to gain its independence by force. So in 1804, 1804. Oh, wow. In 1804, the U.S. got its independence in 1776. Actually, in 1797, Haiti kicked out the French, and in 1804, it finally paid the French government to be able to be considered independent, which has also been a struggle, because if you imagine, this is a country made of people of color, where the rest of the world is, if you're of color, you're enslaved. And even though they had great product, because in the early days, and that's why France made them pay, is the GDP of France, which was 40% of the GDP, was based on the goods coming from Haiti. And those were sugar, cocoa, and coffee. And if anybody thinks about when that was, like around the 1700s, that's when Europe was enamored with this. And a cup of chocolate could be something like equivalent to $200 today. So you can imagine, not a very easy thing to give up. And the island also had to make sure that it wasn't overturned or overrun by the other Europeans. So in a way, for almost 100 years, the land was closed, in which meant that from an economic standpoint, it didn't prosper. Today, Haiti has been embroiled into what is a political unrest. This picture is from November a year ago. The unrest has subsided a little bit, but still continues. And as you can imagine, it is exacerbated by things such as COVID. So, however, I will say Haiti was under lockdown prior to COVID. They actually had, last year they had a word called pays lock, which was country lock, which meant you didn't go out of your house, you didn't mingle, and as soon as there might be little thing wrong, you ran back home. That has meant really that the economic reality is dismal. If you think about it, like many of the emerging economies, Haiti relies a lot on remittance, and the ability to actually prosper is limited by infrastructure challenges, and also by the economic downturn that is happening. So what we have seen thus far is a lot of people losing jobs. Now, the down effect of that, and I know that India saw some of this when the pandemic hit, a number of individuals had to go from the UAE back to India because they no longer had a job, they no longer had the visas that allowed them to live there, which meant when they came back to India, they didn't have a job either. But that's not so bad as the exacerbation that it creates in their own personal lives, because the money that they used to make outside of their country was being sent back to help their family, either with their living or any schooling, those kind of things, and that income is gone. Now, when we talk about blockchain, it is really about the decentralization of the exchange of value. And blockchain, distributed ledger technology, I think that the blockchain is like when we call Kleenex tissue paper. Every tissue paper growing up for me was Kleenex. Well, it's because it's the first brand which really made a difference. And I think it's the same thing with the blockchain. The second one who has made an app, and the whole concept is really about the decentralized transactions which are being transferred from one system to the other, allowing for a new level of trust. And I say new level because we need to think technology enables that trust, but at the end of the day, it still requires the validation of a human that that value still exists. So when we look at use cases for distributed ledger technology, we need to be looking at the business decisions. What are the purposes for putting this system in place? What does it actually achieve? Where are our pockets of lack of trust? Or where do we want to create faster throughput? So when we look, one of the places that it makes very much makes sense is in agriculture. And in agriculture, it can be everything from the exchange of value, the confirmation that something has happened, such as certification. But at the end of the day, if we look at this ecosystem, it is the oldest functioning ecosystem in the world. It goes back to when men decided to stop hunting and actually start toiling the earth. But what has happened of late is that the one which is toiling, which is the farmer, is the one getting the least. Many of you in India will be very much aware of the destabilization that's happening in the farming now that we have the farming bills. You'll have people on both sides saying it's a good thing because now you have market forces. But the other thing is, are those market forces still going to bring in equity to the farmers? So when we look at agriculture, there are a number of challenges, but the key challenges are first the lack of trust between the farmer and the buyers and the quote-unquote middlemen, lack of information of what has happened, what is to happen, how much is there to be, lack of financial inclusion. And, financial inclusion for me, it's a weird one because it's not to say that these people don't have mobile, because it used to be they didn't have mobile, they didn't have bank account. They have a mobile, but they don't have access to a bank account. Well, in my point of view, a bank account is just a place to store. I can have a wallet, but if my wallet is empty, what's the value of that wallet? So the financial inclusion really needs to be about how do we make sure that they get a fair share and also can keep their money safe? And finally, that liquidity. Lack of liquidity is not just about that physical cash, but the cash that they need to buy the inputs, the access to input, the access to insurance, which then leads us to the biggest issue which faces all of us, which is food waste. You know, when we think of food waste, we might think of it's because a child didn't eat everything on their plate. That's not really, this is one part. Food waste happens because there isn't proper storage, there isn't proper communication how to get it there, and then eventually we do get to the fact that some of us may, in some parts of the world, buy more than we should. I'm very worried about what's happening in the world today when I'm looking at a place like the United States, where it's been king of the food waste. And the last couple of weeks, they've been talking that 60% of the Americans are food insecure, which means they don't know where their food is coming from. But if they have a problem, let's not even start thinking about what's happening in places like Southeast Asia and Africa, where we already had seen an issue with availability of food and food safety. So those are things that I think that there are challenges that blockchain can look to address. Let's see. Now, we probably have heard of the value chain, and this to me is the most important thing. So there is blockchain, there is value chain, and the value you. And when you look at a farmer, it can be either a local market, which is the informal market, or what is now, because of modern society, the way we work, a much more integrated system. But this integrated system does not take in fairly the plight of the farmer. And the customer also doesn't always know where their goods come from. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we did in Haiti. About 2 years ago to the date, we at Agriledger had been working on responding to a call that was put out by the government of Haiti and the World Bank. It was based on what they call a DAI, which is a development aid investment done by the World Bank into Haiti. If you see the mangoes sitting on the boy's next to the boy's foot, these are, I know India thinks that the Alfonso mango is the best. I think this is the best. And it can be also proven in terms of both of those mangoes, when they get to places like the US, fetch a very, very high price. But we also know that for the most part, this is not shared with the farmer who has done it. And this young man, if I look, he's probably about 13, 14. This was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He should have been in school. Instead, he was getting those mangoes. And what we want to do is to allow his family or him one day to be able to have those mangoes. Because you see how they're sitting in the sack. By the time they get to market, 3/4 of them are going to be bruised, and they're not going to be in the best way. So what we were looking to do is to get that to change. So I have a question for you guys. From your point of view, what percentage of a mango which sells at $3 from in the US do you think the farmer or the producer in Haiti gets? So I'll give you 2 seconds to answer. Can't see the chat, but I'm expecting to see some in the chat. So please do give me something. So now for the reveal. 2% of the farmer's earning goes, and then 98% is lost to middlemen. Now, can we imagine a world where it takes only a few seconds to know how much of what you paid went to the producer? And this is what we're doing at Agriledger. We're helping make it happen with the World Bank. So we did the project, and I have to tell you myself that I was surprised. I was expecting at best to get to where we would be at 32% for the farmer and 68%. To me, that would have been a 30% increase. Can you imagine what it's like? We ran this project in the middle of the pandemic, actually. It started in May 1st and lasted till the end of July. And the farmers were able to earn 68% of the proceed. So what that did was about six runs, so about 8 weeks. There was some clock. 38,000 kgs were actually harvested. Of that, 23,000 actually were sold. So we were able to see the points where there were failures, where the farmer either bought a bunch which was returned by him or lost throughout the process. So if we were talking about food waste and food loss, we can now start seeing what are the problems. There was $40,000 in terms of the total sale, and of that, 7.5%, 750% increase to the farmers. So now I want to take you through a little bit of what happens in terms of communication. So you have the fruits being harvested using just normal text messages. We tell the farmer where the what's happening. And when you, as a customer in the US, receive the fruit, you can QR code it. And one of the things that you can do is learn how to do recipe. I don't know about you, but sometimes I buy things and then I'm like, okay, what can I make with that again now? I have to say I have increased my cooking knowledge. Not that I'm loving it as much as more during the pandemic, but many a time I've had to go and say, okay, what can much better too? So now we also want to have what is a customer interaction. So just so you know, zaboka is the word for avocado in Creole. Avocado is also avocat, which is lawyer. So pretty interesting. So ideally, what we want to do is a customer interaction. The customer will know nutritional value, where it came from, how long it took to get to them, and also recipes that they can have. Now, next step for us is to make it go on acid. And some of what we're looking to do is to start looking at working with government, with providers of identity, providing loans and access to finance to farmers. Because if you think about it right now, smallholder farmers don't get access to credit because nobody knows what's happening with the product. Nobody has a view of what is the quality or things like that. So this is about working with investors to be able to get them access to funding, delivering the seeds to them, delivering any kind of support that they need in terms of preparation, drilling holes, satellite information. And then when the farmer actually can pay right away. The idea is that also this is about working with organizations which have a purpose, which is when the organization actually sells, if the profit is higher than what they had stated, then money will be sent back, the percentage of that, which is over, will be sent back to the farmer for him to use for the next year. And this also covers some of the platform costs. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Agriledger in terms of what we do and the benefits about us is, it's about really empowerment of the farmer, improving the margin of the farmer, trying to automate and digitize more, which then leads to cost efficiency and creating sustainability. And this is really working with the producers. And we have gone and done the fresh fruits first. We are looking to move next into stable crops and also coffee and cocoa, so semi-perishable. in terms of, now I'm going to go to the fun stuff, the technology. So technology-wise, we have a supply chain, know your customer, a payment, and the blockchain. And in terms of the platform of the blockchain that we chose to use R3 because we felt that it was the most advanced permission blockchain that we could have. And it's also becoming very much of an interoperable network. Obviously, this is very new technology still, so every day something new happens. But I thought that if I was going to make a bet, this was a bet I was willing to. Also, to me was being able to create the privacy, what is necessary for the producers. And if you think about it also, because we need to have not only the producers, but also the manufacturers and others participate, it was very important that we use an application which would allow people to participate without worrying that their secret information is out. But at the same level of looking to use permission, the data will be open. So taking that data up to doing the anonymization that are necessary, then that data can be used by NGOs, governments, and IGOs to provide the support where it's needed. So our solution is really looking to do an end-to-end traceability platform, has transparent pricing around the value chain, and will look to incorporate, and does incorporate, sensors, geos, IoTs, and geotags. Obviously, we are just starting, so what we're doing is we're looking at the data and starting to see what does the data tell us. There's certain information, of course, that goes across right away, but we are of the mind that you need to get to learn your data and then start being able to make it available. Well, when I say your data, it's the data for everyone so that we can help the producers also make the right decisions. So in terms, I'll tease you guys a little bit in terms of our architecture. We do not do, we use Firebase as a mechanism of an endpoint for our REST API. So if those of you who don't know REST API, many times you'll go into certain places and you don't have access to the internet. So what we look to do is to allow for updates to still happen in a asynchronous fashion, which means that securities are there. And as soon as data comes back up, the data gets written into the blockchain. We then provide information back, so we communicate to banks. So we, in case I didn't make this very clear, we not only track the products throughout its journey, we also track what I would call the financial obligations. So which means that when something has been sold, it looks and says, who touched me? Who was involved in my transaction? Or it could be they weren't involved, but who's owed, such as the taxman. And then when the money flows back, those transactions are taken into account, and those calculations are done by the smart contract, and that information is sent to the payment provider. The same way also in terms of communication, we communicate to the farmer when they're supposed to come in with their goods, when the goods have arrived ports, when their goods have been sold, and how much money they're going to be receiving. This means that we have certain participating clients, which can be mobile, web, IoT, front end, whichever. And then we have the reporting, as I explained before, which is non-participant clients, but that data is being sanitized, for a better word, because I may want you to know that this product came from me, but I don't need you to know how much money I made for the year. I may want you to know how much I got paid for this product, but you don't need to know what my wealth is. And this is why it's important when we look at blockchain to not only look at what are we solving for, but also what are the potential that we have for creating I want to say strife, but what are the issues that we may end up creating? So it's very important to really sit down and think about those things. Now, I mentioned the payment and the smart contracting. So what we're doing is we're working with banks through the smart contract, to be able to send the payment instruction. So once the sale has been fulfilled, that means the bank will send money to producers, but it will also take out any money which is due to anybody else. And the other thing that you can do with this now is you can start layering other services, other financial services, such as factoring. Because usually the factoring is either against the producer organization, or the exporter. And they're not in the country where the money is from, which means they don't have the credit rating. If you think about it, the buyer usually is going to be a big supermarket or someone who has credit. And they're agreeing, and you can demonstrate with the blockchain that they have received the goods, which means the factoring units now can actually go down. The average factoring right now can end up being to the range of about 20 to 40% per annum. And with the blockchain, I've done it on paper, theory, and talking to people, we can get it down to probably the average about 6 to 12. Can you imagine what that does in terms of liquidity? So these are ideas and concepts that can be ways to then support better the agricultural value chain by making it much more profitable. So that's me, I'm Genevieve. If you want to get more information about us, you can always find it on our website, which is agriledger.io. We try to be good about answering any question that you may have. I am on LinkedIn, my first name, last name. I don't think there's only one more person with my name, and she lives in Canada, and she's a nurse. So you should be able to find me. And I now will open for any questions that may be, and happy to take your questions.
Well, thank you, ma'am, for your incredible presentation. You well toured on how blockchain technology can be implemented for traceability in supply chain, also empower small farmers. Now we'll go ahead and take some questions. Audience, if you have any questions, please kindly drop them in the question box or chat. We'll be very happy to answer them.
So there's Aluru has asked, could I please go the farmer flow that has been diagrammed? Can Aluru speak? I think he can unmute himself, can't he? Hi.
Hello, ma'am. Good evening, first of all. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Are you talking the one where I showed the flow of the different things that could be available to the farmer?
No. In the initial slides, you just presented a diagram where there is a manufacturing units in between local markets and the international
yes,
market.
I'll go back there. Yes. Let me share that slide. Sure. I didn't know where to go, so I figured let me ask first.
Yes, this is so. Could you please explain in simple, like in a high level, where Agriledger helps in this process?
Sure.
Yeah.
So right now, what we have done is we're not looking at the local market. The farmer, if he comes in with goods, he gets them through the local market on his own. But we're envisioning something where if something is rejected for the foreign market, he can then be able to actually get it to the local market, which is not the informal market. So what we do right now is we track the transportation, the storage, the packing and processing, the shipment. We evidence the custom, then the warehousing, and then the retailer. So how we do that is when the farmer, first the farmer is seen, he will ask, they do a harvest planning, and he sees that he has 5 trees in the back of his house, but those 5 trees are mature enough that probably they're giving about 400 fruits every week or every 2 weeks. He gets a phone number and he's told when your tree starts flowering, start having fruits, call us and we will schedule you. So he gets a call also to remind him, and then he's like, yeah, I think I'm gonna have 1,000. So it goes 1,000 in, and that gets written into the blockchain that farmer Joe will have 1,000 fruit that he will be delivering. So the logistics service provider, which is a cold chain provider, says, okay, wait and see how many other farmers in the region, and then they arrange. So let's say there's 20 farmers, and that's going to be a truck full. And they they schedule it for 2 days from now. The farmer will get a message telling him, at this time, we would like you to come in with your fruits, and we will get them through. So when he comes over, the fruits are segregated to see what's good, and this is why I talk about the de-risking. The farmer now has the risk to make sure he's bringing in the right fruits, not something which is not so good. So it's triage, and he actually had said he would bring 1,000. He bought 1,200. Out of the 1,200, 1,100 are accepted. At that point, that goes into the blockchain, and he gets to sign a contract which says, we've received 1,000 from you, and he then gives the rights to the transport company, to the logistic company, to the broker to sell for him, and also even the bank to make the payments for him. So he says to the bank, Agriledger is going to send you information, and that information is what you use to do the distribution of money. So, and for that, you can take out your fees. When the goods now are moved to the storage location, we're measuring the temperature. Then when it's in the package and processing, there is also the triage that happens. So one of the things that happens with mango, and I don't know if you guys have traveled abroad, so if you go and have a mango in the US from India, it's never going to taste the same, because guess what? Before it can come into the US, it has to be boiled for an hour at about 40 degrees so that it can kill any bacteria or any bugs which could be in there. Boil it, and then you make it cold, and it's kind of funny. So all that information is captured to say it has happened. Then it gets into the shipment, goes through the custom, goes through the quality assurance, which is done by the importer, and the importer then sends it to the warehouse of the retailer or the buyer. Every fruit at the packing process received a QR code. Every box received a QR code, and every pallet received. So I would know from pallet which boxes are in that pallet and which farmers are part of that pallet. When it gets to obviously when you break down the pallet, you're going to be sending certain boxes to different places around the country, and when the retailer receives it, he's not going to be removing the QR code, which allows the customer to be able to see the whole journey. So part of this also is making sure that it goes fast, because you don't want the fruit, you want to make sure there's no ethylene, and ethylene is the gas which makes, it's a natural gas, but it happens when things are maturing, fruits are maturing. So you want to make sure by cooling the fruit that it doesn't start maturing. But even then, if you keep a fruit at a cold temperature for days or months before it gets to the hand of the customer, it doesn't have the same taste. So this is really about being able to get the product from the farmer to the customer faster in the best way possible, which then means, and I don't know if you've been looking, now it's becoming like 70%. I used to be like a year ago, it was 30%, but I think after us spending so much time at home, we've become even more cognizant of where our food comes from. And so now the latest report are saying 70% of customers would be willing to pay more to know where their food comes from, which means that it turns all the way back into the value chain to make sure that the farmer gets a fair share. Does that help?
Yes, ma'am. That's very fantastic concept in between. And yeah, one thing I want to know is, you said like when a farmer comes with 1,000 fruits and just transport it, like keep in transport, the Agriledger will straight away inform bank, or the bank will send the payment to the
Mm-hmm.
farmer.
Yep.
Right. So at the time when transport is done, like when he
No,
just
no, no. It depends. It won't be at when the transport. It's when the sale has happened. The farmer gives the right to the bank, because what happens is that there is going to be an advance given to the farmer. So what we're doing currently is, because this is working with the government and the World Bank, they put in a pot of money so that the farmer can get an advance.
okay,
The advance is equal to the local price. So let me give you an idea. The local price for the mango is about 14 cents a kilo.
okay,
Okay?
yeah,
So the best price the farmer is going to get is about 14 cents a kilo. So he gets that money. But then what happens is, within 2 weeks, when the mango is sold
yeah,
uh, abroad, and now it's not even 2 weeks, it's going to be like top 2 weeks, maybe 5 days. As soon as the payment is, the sale is done, in the project in the summer, local price was 14 cents. After everything was paid, transportation and also cold storage and everything else, the farmers ended up with 186 a kilo. So that's the 750 difference.
yeah. Yes, that's nice. And another that is the farmer's end. That's fine, actually, very nice. And coming to the consumer end or the retailer, uh, how could a farmer knows the demand? Like, will the retailer keep have any other interface or a client where he can demand some fruits, like I want these many fruits for
I,
so
th-
and so.
I think that could be something that comes in the future. What
Yeah,
we're doing is we're not disrupting the importer and retailer standpoint. The importer still receives a percentage of the sales, and the retailer is still dealing with the individuals that he knows. Uh, there are opportunities to go direct to customer or direct to retailer, but this is not the goal of this. I should have probably said better that the goal of this project is to create entrepreneurs out of farmers, producers, by giving them access to market and access to financial services. So the market is done through the normal channels that it's done currently. But let's think of everybody in between. So if I look at the transport, the packing, the storage, all those become services that are provided to him. So think almost like Uber. This is an Uberization, a service which is well, compensated, but then gets the goods from point A to point B in quality. What we need to move to in farming is to get to what I call regenerative which means we produce what is needed, not more, not less, which means it's about quality over quantity. What happens sometimes is farmers overproduce in order to be able to get enough, and because they're not getting a fair and equitable share of the proceed, that means that they continue to overproduce. With something like this, you can then start being able to see what is being produced, what are the demands, and if the customer demand changes, being able to quickly get back to the farmer so that they understand what the customer wants. You still will need to have, let's say, if it is either the internal market, the formal internal market, or the formal external market, you will still need to have transportation, storage, packing, shipment, custom. All those things are still needed. But these do not need to be the one buying the goods from the farmer. They just need to provide a service to the farmer. Make sense?
Yes, yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So Gokul Natal asks, how did the farmer and the government welcome the technology? Didn't have to convince them. They came to me. So that's always good when they come to you. And that's actually been one of my observations. I'm actually very much of a belief that this is the future. However, it takes us time to make change as human beings, and we only tend to make change when we have catastrophic situation as we've had in the last few months. So I expect to see, I've seen a lot of demand coming in for what I do, and I expect more to come as a result. In terms of the technology, so what had happened is that they did the mango. Didn't mean that everybody behaved. I even didn't behave, but hey, such is life. But once we got it going, we realized that actually what we thought was possible was even greater. And it used to be where the service provider was receiving a fixed amount, and they're not like the Hass exactly. They're much more nutty, and they are very well priced. And the service provider works to transport, store, package, and get the goods over to the U.S. Whatever is now received in terms of a profit is split between the two of them. Depending on the commodities, certain service providers have agreed to a 50-50% split, and others have agreed to having probably a third, depending on what makes sense for them. Now, if you think about this, what's lovely about this is not journey. The farmer grows, the service provider works with them to get them the best money. And at the end, it's still better for the farmer, because before he was going to get 14 cents. With this, he's going to get probably to split $3. So that's still $1.50, which is much better than what he was getting before, because he doesn't have to pay the other guy to do the work. So this is the model that's happening, and we see it expanding much more as time goes by. I can't get to the Q&A, so let's see. Let's see. How does the retailer make profit? The retailer still makes profit. The price I gave you was the price of the wholesale price, and the retailer still sells based on what the customer wants. Now, you could technically, we have to remember also the retailers have been telling us for a lot of years that they only make 2 to 3% in terms of profit, because they have to have the store, the people working, the temperature, and all those things. So what we're trying to do is to really enable a fairer distribution. This is not to say the retailer doesn't make money, but what happens is that the retailer sometimes doesn't make as much money. I'm going to use some of what I know of the Indian market when it comes to onion. If you look at the onion, the farmer might get 2 rupee against the 100 that you're paying in the supermarket. Now, when you go down the line, you found out that he paid 2, the person who bought it from him sold it for 30. Then the next person add a little more, and then us as customer at the end are paying 100 or maybe 150 for that 2 rupees. So if we can make it to either we buy it from him at 50, or we know how much went in every part of the chain, because that's one of the things that we are able to do. If we can demonstrate what has gone through across the chain, then we can be assured that we understand what we're choosing to pay our money for. See, I think there's another question that came through. Who decides the price of the goods? The market. All of that is done by market forces. There is a site called Thrive, which is THRIVE, which is a global marketplace for commodities, fresh fruit commodities. There's several of them around the world. And it's us as customer who decide the price. Now, if you're asking me what is the market price, how is that decided? Again, that is the market economics. If there isn't much available, and I should have said that, like the Alfonso mango, the Haitian mango is very highly priced. However, the market is only getting 40% of what it demands. A whole bunch of it is going to waste, either because the farmer doesn't have access to market, so it's just falling off the tree, or by the time it gets to market, it's not assuring that what gets to market is the best available. So I hope this has been helpful. I think there's more question. I'll stop sharing so I can see the other one. So this came from Robin Thomas. So right now, I'll go with Robin's question, who hosts the nodes. So right now, the nodes are hosted by us in a Microsoft Azure environment. Because we're using Corda, it also has this whole concept of the notary node. The next thing for us is to actually get a third-party notary node, being the third party acting as the notary node, and then it's not really me. It's looking to have a software provider to be hosting those nodes. But the next step will be to allow individual to spin their own node. So you can host your node on Azure or Microsoft, on AWS or Microsoft, and then request to be accessed to access the network. We thought that it was much more important right now to make sure we had a working system. By the way, it's an open source system also, and we'll be releasing the code probably around January onto the GitHub. So somebody else asked the question, what is the use of AI ML algorithm in the architecture, and how is it useful? Because what happens is that, as I explained, we're capturing all the data onto the blockchain. And what's the point of data? And I think this is the piece that we haven't been talking a lot about in the blockchain space that we need to sort of come to terms with, is the real value is I'm creating data that is trusted and verified. So if I say, if we have somebody write, not me as an individual, say that my goods are organic, and there is a trusted body which has come and done the organic, now it's part of my record, that information then can help drive decision. So if I look at two farmers doing the same thing, but one is much more successful than the other, we can then start wondering what is it that's different, and then using the AI and machine learning to provide that. The other thing that you can think about is, if I look at, mangoes, not such a big deal, but if we look at things like wheat and rice, staple crops, which are not only used for selling, but also for feeding our population. If you have that information at an anonymized way from a government or an IGO, you can start making decisions in terms of where are their surplus or where is their need. When we had the flood a couple of years ago, which happened in Texas, in India, and so much of the rice fields and also wheat fields were destroyed, how do you then understand how to pull the lever from an economic standpoint to make sure that you have enough to feed the population, that you remove, you might put in tariff for export, or you might also lower the import tariffs. I hope that makes sense, Feta.
Yes, ma'am. Any more questions from the audience?
So if there is a 10th one.
It looks like we have covered all the questions now, ma'am.
Yes, and I'd like to say it's been an immense pleasure to get to speak with you guys and sort of answer some of this your questions, and I hope that I was able to cover them well. I should have said also our application is being designed and built by a team based in Bangalore, and so it gives me, I have to say it's not just me doing for Haiti, but India is also contributing a lot toward the Haitian and also farmers around the world. And thank you very much for your time today.